Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage John J. DeGioia, President of Georgetown University.
Well, good morning. It's my privilege to have this opportunity to welcome all of you to Georgetown today to discuss a deeply important issue, elevating the status of women and girls throughout Afghanistan. And it's an honor to be joined by so many distinguished global leaders, many of whom will share their perspectives this morning on the progress that Afghan women and girls have already made, as well as on the challenges and opportunities that they continue to face today. I wish to express my gratitude to Secretary of State John Kerry for his leadership and for being with us this morning. I know that I speak for all of us when I say that we're very much looking forward to his remarks today. I'd also like to thank his predecessor, Secretary Hillary Clinton, for her contributions to advancing the rights of Afghan women. In a few moments, I'll have the privilege of introducing Secretary Clinton. And I also wish to recognize former First Lady Laura Bush for all of her work to help create opportunities for women and girls in Afghanistan. Mrs. Bush, it's always a pleasure to have you here at Georgetown, and we look forward to the conversation that you and Secretary Clinton will engage in later this morning. And I'd like to extend special thanks to all the members of the Diplomatic Corps who are with us this morning. And I also want to thank those who helped to make today possible, including the Georgetown Institute for Women, Peace, and Security, the U.S. Afghan Women's Council, the George W. Bush Institute, and the Alliance to Support the Afghan People. And lastly, I wish to express my gratitude to the members of our Georgetown family who help our community contribute to the challenges and opportunities facing women and girls in Afghanistan, including Dr. Phyllis McGrath for her leadership of the U.S. Afghan Women's Council, which has had a home here at Georgetown since 2008, and Ambassador Milan Verveer for her contributions as Executive Director of Georgetown's Institute for Women, Peace, and Security, which was founded earlier this year. It is a privilege for Georgetown to have the opportunity to contribute to this critical work through both the U.S. Afghan Women's Council and our Institute for Women, Peace, and Security. Earlier this week, our community had the honor of hosting the $1 million Opus Prize, which was awarded to Dr. Sakina Yaqubi, who founded Afghanistan's largest NGO, an organization committed to promoting education for women and children throughout the country. She founded the Afghan Institute for Learning with $20,000 in 1995. Today, her organization has a $1.7 million budget and runs more than 50 centers that focus on literacy, higher education, and arts and culture. It's an honor to have her with us here this morning. Her work and the work of many others, including many gathered in this room, have helped to enable significant advances for Afghan women and girls. Some reports show that girls' enrollment in school increased from 5,000 in 2001 under Taliban rule to more than 2.4 million just a decade later. Sustaining and building upon these gains and creating wider opportunities for women throughout the country remains critical, especially as Afghan citizens face significant transitions, both with an upcoming presidential election and the drawdown of U.S. troops. In this context, today's gathering has an added urgency, an added significance, that the work we engage in to ensure that women in Afghanistan remain empowered and continue to have opportunities to create change for themselves and their communities only grows more important. We're fortunate to have with us here this morning several Afghan women who themselves have been working to build a more just, more equitable, and more peaceful Afghanistan. Please turn your attention to this video, which highlights their extraordinary work and the work of many others.
The story of Afghan women is the story of survival. We have fought hard to get back our basic rights. The rights we yearn for in my country are taken for granted by most American women and girls.
There has to be opportunities for them to work, considering that we had 30 years of war and women were not in the society. They were invisible.
The girls are going to school, going to universities. The women work in the offices, in the government and non-government and international offices, and they are busy with some business. So they have some activities and also the social activities. The women are in parliament.
نزدیک کودکستان نیشتر درزه سوپ منزل رسامی
میخوایم که در آینده حقوقدار خوب باشیم.
تمام وقت نمیشه که ما متکی به مردا باشیم و در یگان جا کار است که خود ما باید متروانی را یاد داشته باشیم.
I believe women and men both have a very parallel role within the society, because if women could do it alone, they would have almost done it. If men could do it, they would never wait for women to come. So I really believe that both of them should. They have their equal roles within the peace process.
These women were not educated. They were absolutely illiterate women. And even they learn how to educate their daughter. So woman is really a agent for peace. Woman is a agent for change. And then they start to play an active role in the society, not only in the family.
We do have a lot of problems, especially with me being a woman. Not only me, but all the women who are working in business. People don't believe that a woman is able to work side by side with men. People always say to my husband, "You are not a man. You allow your woman to work outside the home. How is this possible? She is working with Americans, with foreigners." But my husband doesn't care about this kind of talk because he knows that his wife is working for her homeland.
There
has been lots of efforts toward the elimination of violence, from legislation, from implementation, but then we are lacking monitoring, and justice mechanisms is not very strong to deliver justice to the victims of violence in this country. But I think we should also address and focus on the cultural aspects of violence and bringing peace in the society.
We have provisions protecting women's rights and promoting women's rights within the constitutions, but it's not translated in action.
Addressing violence against women should be a part of peace process or any peace process development in the country.
رمانی داشتیم در افغانستان مانند ملاله غازیده نازوانا و این خواهرای عزیز ما رای از اونا را تعقیب میکنن. مرد و زن دو بال یک پرنده هست و اینا میتونن این فرض حینیست بالای زن و مرد که به خاطر وطن خود، به خاطر نواموس ملی از این وطن، به خاطر مردم خود مصدر جامعه و به خدمت گردند.
I want to serve Afghanistan and to help other women serve in society. I'd like to see an end to the suppression of women here.
I, as an Afghan woman, have to speak up to other Afghan women that it's not a sin to be a woman.
I want to be a good snowboarder, and I wish one day I can teach our Afghan girls in Afghanistan.
It is obvious that in Afghanistan, boxing is a very difficult career for women. It is also difficult for men, but it does show the people here that an ordinary girl can follow a boxing career.
And we have to identify that as a woman peace contributor, this is what I can offer to the process.
So any development, any progress, any success in any area it could be, in economics, in education, in healthcare, in democracy, and human rights, it's not possible without women. Women is core, women's empowerment is fundamental.
I just hope that next year in 2014, 8 March will be more secure, and the women in Afghanistan should have more confidence, because we have election next year, immediately after March, so they should be prepared to participate in the election, because their participation on the election guarantee democracy in this country and promote transparency and fairness of the election.
Well, it is now my pleasure to introduce to you a public servant who has set an example for women in the United States and throughout the world through her life and her work, Secretary Hillary Clinton. She's dedicated her life and her career to protecting vulnerable populations, creating pathways for opportunity for them, and building a fairer, more just society. In Beijing in 1995, in one of her best-known addresses, she said that, quote, "Human rights are women's rights, and women's rights are human rights." Her commitment to elevating the status of women around the world only grew stronger throughout the rest of her years as First Lady, then as a United States Senator, and most recently while serving as Secretary of State. Shortly into her service in that role, she created the State Department's first ever Ambassador at Large for global women's issues to ensure increased attention and support to the issues and challenges that women and girls face throughout the world. We were privileged to welcome Secretary Clinton back to Georgetown just a couple of years ago for the launch of the United States National Action Plan on Women, Peace, and Security. We're honored by Secretary Clinton's work here as an honorary founding chair of our Institute for Women, Peace, and Security, and as honorary co-chair of the U.S. Afghan Women's Council. During a meeting with Afghan officials in 2010, she made a promise to the women of Afghanistan, saying, "We will not abandon you. We will stand with you always." Madam Secretary, it's an honor to have you back at Georgetown. We're grateful to have this opportunity to partner with you in this work to stand with the women of Afghanistan. Please join me in welcoming Secretary Hillary Clinton.
Thank you. Thank you, and good morning, Georgetown. It's always great to be here on this campus, and I want to once again thank President DeGioia and all of the university for your active leadership, not only on behalf of the intellectual study of and analysis of issues of importance to our world, but your leadership in the civic life, not only of Washington, but of our country and indeed across the globe. This is yet another example of that, and I welcome the members of the Diplomatic Corps who are here with us, and in particular, all of the women of and from Afghanistan who have joined us today. I am very honored to be the honorary co-chair of the U.S. Afghan Women's Council along with Laura Bush. Mrs. Bush has been the real inspiration and driving force behind the Council from the very beginning. And the Council represents a commitment, a public-private partnership to try to support the women of Afghanistan in the transition that they are undergoing. We can point to a lot of progress, some of it mentioned by President DeJoya and in the excellent video that just was shown. But we're well aware this is a serious turning point for all the people of Afghanistan, but in particular for the hard-fought gains that women and girls have been able to enjoy, and what we can do as Americans to try to support these courageous women and men who want to build the Afghanistan that they imagine. Now, when Melanne Verveer finished her remarkable tenure at the State Department as our first ever ambassador for global women's issues, she and I talked about what she might do next. The word rest never entered her vocabulary. We talked more about what we could do to continue promoting the role of women in peace and security, a cause that we both care about deeply. And that's why here at Georgetown, we have seen the establishment under Melanne's leadership of the first ever Institute for Women, Peace, and Security in the entire world, insofar as we know. Once again, I'm just following Melanne wherever she goes and am proud to be the honorary founding chair. The Institute is co-sponsoring today's event, but the Institute is much more than events, even though they are important. It's really going to lead the way to establish a scholarship that we can look to, following up on the National Action Plan that was adopted in the first term of the Obama administration, pointing out the benefits to be gained by including women in peacemaking and peacekeeping, recognizing women's security needs, sometimes unique only to women, bringing the world, particularly defense and intelligence analysts, on board with diplomats and development experts and academics about what more we can do to support the security of women and to engage them in peace building. Now, as you saw at in the video, there was that wonderful quote by the Brigadier General that men and women are like two wings on the same bird. I think I'm going to shamelessly appropriate that. But it is true. It is absolutely a vivid image to keep in our minds. You cannot move forward, whether you're talking economically, politically, culturally, security-wise, without both wings flapping. And what we have the opportunity to do through the Council, through the Georgetown Institute, is to partner with governments around the world, particularly those that have been involved in the international coalition or in support of a lot of the development and human rights work that has gone on in Afghanistan, in order to keep that hope and promise alive to women and girls in Afghanistan, that they will not go back. They will not be forced back into their homes, denied education and health care, stripped of their rights to participate in the economy and the political system of their country. And in so doing, we have a great friend and ally in this effort who has been a champion of Afghanistan and particularly Afghan women's rights for many years. He also happens to hold a job that I know a little something about. He is someone who has been just tireless in pursuit of peace, in trying to tackle some of the toughest, most difficult problems on the global agenda. And I'm delighted that he is with us here today. He is no stranger to Afghanistan and has just last month gone back to Kabul, negotiating with President Karzai over the bilateral security agreement that is absolutely core to protecting the security of Afghan women and girls. John Kerry's enduring commitment to Afghanistan is America's enduring commitment. He understands we cannot walk away from this country or this region when our troops come home, that we cannot turn our backs on the people of Afghanistan, especially the women. If their rights and opportunities are undermined, the entire country's stability and prosperity will be undermined as well. So it is my great delight to introduce someone who is known as S, standing for Secretary of State, and someone who I know sends a strong message just by being here, but beyond the words that you will hear of his understanding and commitment, there's a real passion. We have an advocate for the women and girls of Afghanistan in Secretary John Kerry.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Hillary, for a very, very generous introduction. And thank you most of all for the remarkable work that you have done. I think you're over here, Hillary. Here we go. Get you over there. You know, that's my job, seat the former First Lady, Secretary. What a pleasure to be here. And distinguished members of the Diplomatic Corps, President DeGioia, thank you for this unbelievable, one of my favorite venues in the world. Madam Secretary / Senator / First Lady / everything. And former First Lady Bush, it's great to be here with you, Laura. To our ambassadors and everybody else, I'm really happy to be here. For all the men studying here at Georgetown, who sat in or sit in classrooms where Bill Clinton sat so many years ago, my advice to you is this: study hard, go to Oxford, become governor of your state, and then maybe you can marry one of the country's remarkable secretaries of state. I think everybody here knows that nobody has done more to advance the cause of women and the cause of Afghan women, together with Laura Bush, in our foreign policy directly than Secretary Clinton. And she took the helm of the State Department at a particularly challenging time, a critical moment in the history of the war. And she has worked tirelessly to remind all of us that this fight is not just waged on the battlefield. It's a fight for the lives of Afghanistan's people and their future. And it is a fight, above all, for universal values and aspirations. And I think we all owe her a tremendous debt of gratitude for the work that she has done. Thank you, Hillary. Appreciate it. I want to thank Georgetown's Institute for Women, Peace, and Security. I want to thank the U.S. Afghan Women's Council, the George W. Bush Institute, and the Alliance in Support of the Afghan People for co-hosting and coming together to bring this remarkable event together here today. I particularly want to thank all of you. You are a remarkable group of women, absolutely extraordinary, and I'm pleased to meet a couple of you in Afghanistan. Thank you for coming here, and I know people will really enjoy hearing the program later. I want to express my gratitude also to former First Lady Laura Bush, as Hillary did in her comments and her introduction. She really helped lead the effort to advance opportunities for women in Afghanistan. And if you haven't seen it yet today, she has a terrific op-ed in today's Washington Post. And Madam First Lady, we thank you very much for your leadership also. And as Hillary did, I want to pay particular tribute and thanks to our nation's first ambassador at large for global women's issues, Milan Verveer, and her successor, Kathy Russell, who has just returned from Afghanistan. This is very special for me to be able to be here today, particularly with these extraordinary women who have lived their lives every single day to make sure that all women can pursue their potential and live free of violence. And we all know that creating opportunities for women is not just the right thing to do. It's also a strategic necessity. Societies where women are safe, where women are empowered to exercise their rights and to move their communities forward, these societies are more prosperous and more stable, not occasionally, but always. And nowhere is the pursuit of this vision more important and in many ways more compelling and immediate and possible than in Afghanistan. If I had to walk blind into a district in Afghanistan and I could only ask one question to determine how secure it was and how much progress it was making, I would ask, what proportion of the girls here are able to go to school? There's no question in my mind that investing in Afghan women is the surest way to guarantee that Afghanistan will sustain the gains of the last decade and never again become a safe haven for international terrorists. On my many trips to Afghanistan as a senator and as Secretary of State, I have met with an array of Afghan government officials. I've met with business people, development experts, diplomats. I've met with our brave troops as well as our brave shared responsibility, participation by the international community, the international troops who are there, our counterparts, all of whom have sacrificed for the promise of a safe and secure and a sovereign Afghanistan. But I actually come back time and again to my very first trip to Kabul as Secretary of State, when I met a remarkable woman who is changing Afghanistan. Her name is Roya Mahbub. Now, Roya is chief executive of a software development firm called Citadel. And the local authorities did absolutely everything they could in order to stop her dead in her tracks. They even pressured her family to close her company. But she, like a lot of the women sitting here and like so many women across Afghanistan, absolutely refused to be intimidated. And the first time that she competed for an Afghan government project, guess what? She went up against 6 businesses, led by men, and she won. And it's a good thing she won, because Roya has invested almost all of her profits to provide internet access to 35,000 girls in Herat. And believe me, she's just getting started. Today, she has plans to help 5 times as many girls across Afghanistan. Now, I'm sure you'll hear this in the discussion in a little while. It is hard enough to start your own business anywhere else in the world. But to start it in Afghanistan, to balance the books, build a revenue stream, fight against incredible outrage in the local community is sheer guts and courage and determination. She never backed down. Instead, she's using her talents and her money in order to connect Afghans of all ages, men and women, boys and girls, to a global community and a global economy where all of us are connected to each other. That's the world we live in today. And that's the world that women in Afghanistan want to share in too. Now, as Roya said to me, she doesn't want to be the only woman who's an entrepreneur in Afghanistan. She wants all women to have that opportunity. And she believes nothing should stop any of them. Now, I'm serious when I tell you that I think of Roya and the women like her that I've met in Afghanistan. Every time I hear the amazing numbers that illustrate how far this country has come since 2001, and that underscore what Secretary Clinton was saying a few minutes ago about how critical our choices are with respect to the future. In 2001, back then, there were only 900,000 Afghan children in school, and all of them were boys. Today, nearly 8 million students are in school, and more than a third of them are girls. Think about what that means for the future. In 2001, maternal mortality was 1,600 per 100,000 births. Today, it's down by 80%. In 2001, life expectancy for the average Afghan was 42 years. Today, it's 62 years and rising. In 2001, 9% of Afghans had access to basic health care. Today, 60% of Afghans live within an hour of basic health services. In 2001, there was only one television station and it was owned by the government. Today, there are 75 stations and only two, and all of those but two are privately owned. And in 2001, there were virtually no cell phones in the country. Today, there are 18 million, covering about 90% of residential areas. 80% of Afghan women now have access to a cell phone, meaning that they are connected to their families, their friends, and most importantly, they're connected to the world and to their futures. Thanks to entrepreneurs like Roya, Afghan women will also now be connected to the internet too. 10 years ago, it just would have been unfathomable to imagine this. But because of so many individual acts of courage, this is the future that we are now watching Afghan women build. And as Secretary Clinton and Laura Bush and Ambassadors Viver and Russell powerfully remind us, when Afghan women live longer and go to school in greater numbers, all Afghan families and their communities will grow stronger. When Afghan women run their own businesses, all Afghans profit from a more diverse, dynamic, and inclusive economy. And when Afghan women hold public office at the local and national levels, all Afghans gain a stronger voice in their communities. That is the vision behind the United States National Action Plan on Women, Peace, and Security, which President Obama directed to be implemented 2 years ago and which Hillary spoke about just a few minutes ago. And that's why we are committed to bringing the perspectives of women and their full participation to bear on these opportunities and challenges in Afghanistan going forward. Now, what has moved me, and I mean moved me, in my meetings with an impressive group of Afghan women entrepreneurs is that when Afghan women move forward, believe me, they never want to go back. Not to the days when the Taliban ruled Afghanistan. Not to the days before the Taliban, when the country was torn apart by violence. And that is why it is so important that we keep investing in and defending the progress that empowers Afghan women as well as men to be able to have their voices heard and to buy into their future and shape their future. What has been achieved is nothing less than remarkable. And it would have been more than a tragedy if the world ever allowed this progress to be threatened, or worse yet, to be abandoned. So the question now is, where do we go from here? Because as we think about the future, we are mindful of the challenges that Afghan women continue to face. This is a critical moment. Many of the women that I've met share very legitimate concerns that the gains of the past decade could be lost. All that I talked about could be wiped out. And the truth is, their anxiety that I hear when I visit Afghanistan, or you'll hear today, it's palpable. Despite the significant achievements of Afghan women and girls, many challenges still remain. And we remember too well the difficulties, the difficult history that led to the decades of war in Afghanistan. We know the costs of walking away. Believe me, Afghan women know the costs because they have always paid the steepest price. So I say to you today, as Afghanistan sees women standing up in Afghanistan to take control of their country's future, not only for themselves, but for all Afghans, we have to be determined that they will not stand alone. America will stand up with them as they shape a strong and united Afghanistan that secures the rightful place in the community of nations. And that is why President Obama and President Karzai signed a strategic partnership agreement last year that lays out our mutual commitments. And that's why America's relationship with Afghans is changing. It's not ending. There's a lot to do, so much to do, and obviously the road ahead is not easy. The violence that has plagued Afghanistan for decades has left very deep wounds, and it is going to take time to heal. We also know that security is going to be a real challenge. We know that Afghans have to strengthen the rule of law. They have to improve access to justice. We also know that discrimination and violence against women continue to be major problems. But I know every one of these women and the women in Afghanistan today will remain determined, and we have an obligation to remain determined and stand by them. We intend to make clear that securing the rights of Afghan women and girls is not just a challenge for this moment, it's a generational challenge. In fact, we've already made a significant down payment. But make no mistake, finishing this job is going to take courage, and not just the courage of women in Afghanistan. As a proud father of 2 daughters, I have many times been reinforced in the fact that this job will require the courage of men, too. In Afghanistan, it will take the courage of every man who defends his daughter's right to an equal education. It will take the courage of every brother who challenges a law that keeps his sister from owning property or opening a business, and every husband who not only promises that the cycle of domestic violence can stop with him, but who actually proves it. We have spent a great blood and treasure in Afghanistan, and that makes even greater our obligation to get this right. Yes, there are challenges ahead. For sure, the transition is going to be difficult, but without question, there's a world of possibilities staring us in the face. In fact, the transition that we are talking about and now working on is really about 3 transitions: a political transition, a security transition, and an economic transition. And no surprise, Afghan women are playing an integral role in all of them. Just look at the political transition. We all know that the single most important milestone over the next year is the peaceful transfer of power from President Karzai to a democratically elected successor. The elections have to be on time. They have to be accountable and transparent and free and fair and accessible. They have to be inclusive and result in an outcome that is perceived as legitimate by all segments of Afghan society above all, but also by the international community. Above all, though elections obviously always entail competition and debate, they've got to be a unifying moment for the country, not a divisive one. As we speak, as we are here, Afghan women are leading the charge to ensure that the elections next year are credible, inclusive, and transparent. You have Gulazai Alsheki is one of those women. Gulalai is a teacher by profession, but she's always had this passion for public service. She used to work as a human rights commissioner in Kandahar. Today, she's serving on the Independent Election Commission. She told President Karzai she has only one character flaw, that she fears no one. Now, we are deeply encouraged by the Gulalais and others who are taking part in this, by the hundreds of women from all over the country who are running for positions on provincial councils. And we are very pleased to lend our support in partnership with the United Nations to train female volunteers as they facilitate secure access for women at the polls. There is no question that lasting security and prosperity in a unified Afghanistan will take root only when women have as loud a voice as men, not just on election day, but every day. The success of the political transition is essential. It's the prerequisite to the future stability of Afghanistan. But make no mistake, it's not enough, it's not sufficient, it won't do the job alone. That's why the United States firmly supports and will continue to support an Afghan-led peace and reconciliation effort as the surest way to end the violence and bring lasting stability to Afghanistan and the region. But peace is only possible if it respects the historic achievements that Afghanistan has made over the past decade. All those things I listed and talked about, including, above all, the protection of the rights of all Afghans, both men and women. And as part of the outcome of any process, the Taliban and other armed opposition groups have to end the violence, break ties with al-Qaeda, accept Afghanistan's constitution, including its provisions on women's rights. Those are the standards which will lead us in this effort. There can be no compromise on these points, and there can be no peace without respecting the rights of all Afghans, and Afghan women have to have a seat at the table. Afghan women are also at the forefront of the second part of the transition, the security transition. This is one of the most stunning things. You saw it in the video. These folks in uniform, unprecedented. They're joining the army and the police, and they're serving as judges, prosecutors, in some of the most conservative parts of the country. It's an extraordinary transformation. My team recently met with a female police officer from Kabul. For those of you who've been to Afghanistan, you'll know there aren't too many female police officers. And even fewer of them are willing to step forward and tell their story. But on our way home from work one evening, this particular police officer heard another woman screaming inside a house. And when she heard the cries, she didn't run away. She didn't call someone else to come and do the job. She went right up to the house, knocked down the door in order to help. Police officer went inside and she saw a woman inside, badly beaten on the ground. And her husband was standing over her without any hesitation. She was not intimidated, not an ounce of fear. She pushed the husband aside and took the victim to her own house in order to record her statement and make a report. Believe me, that's courage. And it's an example that all Afghans can be proud of and follow. They can be proud that their security and law enforcement forces are growing stronger by the day, more capable by the day. And of course, they can be proud that this past summer, the Afghan National Security Forces took over the lead responsibility in providing security all across the country. Now, as you know, we have made a commitment, along with our NATO partners, to continue to advise, train, and support the Afghan forces beyond 2014, should Afghans approve within the next 2 weeks the bilateral security agreement. Make no mistake, bringing women into the force and supporting their safe and meaningful participation is going to be a key part of this transition. I'm pleased to report to you now that we are closer than ever to completing this task of defining our new partnership with Afghanistan, going well into the future. The bilateral security agreement, when it is completed, will help both countries to fulfill the long-standing commitment that we made to a security partnership after 2014. But I want to underscore again that neither this agreement, when completed, nor the assistance that we provide will replace the role that the Afghan people themselves will play determining the future of their country. Afghan women are also taking enormous risk to support Afghanistan's third transition. That's the economic transition. And women like Hasina Syed are leading the charge. I met Hasina in March. She started a trucking company, I think about 10 years ago. She started it with $500. Now she has 500 trucks. Of her 650 employees, 300 are women, who not so long ago would absolutely never have had the opportunity they have today. She told me that she always knew she wanted to be a businesswoman when she grew up. And I asked why, and she said simply, because then I'll get to be my own boss. Now, obviously that's not just an Afghan trait, that's a universal aspiration. But Afghan women like Hasina are forming connections not just within Afghanistan, but all across the region. Actually, her trucking company is doing a great deal of work in the stands and outside of Afghanistan in order to bring supplies and things, food and so forth, into the country. And what I found is that all of the Afghans understand they may be landlocked, but they're not trapped, and they refuse to be trapped. Afghanistan is linked everywhere by roads, railways, products, markets. And the reality is that Afghanistan's fortunes are tied to the whole region, just as the future of the region is tied to the stability of Afghanistan. We call this the New Silk Road Vision, which Secretary Clinton launched in July of 2011. It's a vision we believe in, and it's a vision we're going to continue to work hard to implement. Hasina knows that the benefits of investing in women and girls are not limited to one village, one province, or one country alone. They ripple out across the borders. You all remember that great quote of Robert Kennedy's about, rippling and creating a huge current that sweeps down the mightiest walls of oppression. That's what's happening. And that's why investing in the training and mentoring of Afghan women entrepreneurs is so important. That's why we launched the Regional Economic Women's Initiative in Bishkek and in Dhaka in order to link female entrepreneurs to markets in South and Central Asia. And that strengthens those women to have those connections to those other parts of the region. That's why we're investing in the education of Afghan girls, so they can break the cycle of poverty and become community leaders and engage citizens in ways that inspire and actually strengthen their neighbors' willingness to join them. That is the future that even here in Gaston Hall today, we are all building together. And that's the story that I want to leave you with today. As I was flying back from Kabul in March, my staff handed me a letter from a young Afghan girl who had earned a scholarship from the State Department to study at the American University of Afghanistan. And this young girl has exactly the same courage as women like Roya, Hasina, Gulalaya, who are marching forward to define this new future for Afghanistan. She has the same vision as leaders like Hillary Rodham Clinton and Laura Bush, who know that no country can succeed if it leaves half of its people behind. The phrase that Hillary and I both loved as we heard it about the bird with two wings. Can't fly with one wing. One line in that girl's letter stood out to me. She wrote about the importance of education and how her goal is not just to help herself, but to lift her community, her society, and her country, just like Roya, Gulalaya, and Hasina are doing today. You know what she wrote very simply? She said, I want to be one of them. That's the power of example. That's the ripple fanning out to create the current. Think about that for a minute. She feels ownership over the future that she is creating in Afghanistan. And that's not something that her sisters or her mother could say even a decade ago. But girls all over Afghanistan, believe me, I promise you, they are saying it today, and they are living that dream, thanks to the courage and the leadership of women themselves in Afghanistan. Our responsibility is clear. We need to make sure that they succeed, because this is one of those benchmark moments, not just for them, but for all of us, and what we care about, what we fight for, and who we are. As we move forward, just keep thinking about that young girl who wrote that letter and the inspiration that she draws from women like Roya, Gulalaya, and Hasina. She just wants to be one of them. And making that happen is going to take every single one of us. Thank you very much. I think Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now we get to the really exciting part of the program. I want to invite Secretary Clinton, Mrs. Bush, Anita Hadari, and her extraordinary colleagues to all come up on stage so we have an opportunity to listen to Anita for a moment. And then I think we're going to go out and they're going to set up the chairs and the program will continue. Can I invite all of you up here, please? Here, let me.
No, I'm okay.
Okay?
Yep.
No, we can, here.
No, I'm okay. I'm okay. Okay. No, this is not working well. Thank you, Secretary Kerry, Secretary Clinton, Mrs. Bush, and Ambassador Bouvier. You have no idea how much your work has impacted Afghan women in Afghanistan. It's a special honor for me to be on the stage with my Afghan role models, the Afghan women leaders, today. Secretary Kerry told you about the women he met in Afghanistan that showed him the change that is possible in my country. I see myself as one of those young women. My story is like this. Like many Afghan children, I saw the world through eyes of a refugee. I had dreams of my homeland, but my dreams only became a reality in 2002, when my family could finally return to Afghanistan. Returning home was not easy. We had to make many adjustments. Life was hard, but we finally were home. My family took advantage of new opportunities and sent me and my 4 sisters and my brother to school. Well, I did well enough that I was able to become an exchange student in 11th grade in California. The move was not easy. I was alone. The culture was so different. But I learned new things. I had always believed that young people could make a difference, but I didn't know how. Back home, people either believed that you had to do something really big or nothing. I learned from my fellow American students that you could do very small things in the community, like cleaning up your neighborhood. It doesn't look big, but through small collective actions, it makes a big difference. Then I went back home to Kabul. I took these lessons and I talked to my fellow students and started mentoring other students. We thought about things that we needed to change. For example, we were tired of being harassed every time we tried to live a normal life, like going to school or going shopping. My friends and I started an anti-harassment campaign. We decided to go out, young men and women, and confront those who harassed us. We organized a demonstration to make our voices heard. No one ever talked about these issues. We didn't even have a definition for harassment. But after our march, people began talking about it. And it was an example of a small collective action making a big impact. Why am I telling you this story? Well, I'm telling you this because I want you to know that we are not stuck in the past. Our country is made up of 60% men, young and women. People who are hungry for change. Our women are not simply victims. We see ourselves as agents of change. My story is just one story. Throughout Afghanistan, there are many of us. Through small actions, sacrifices, working hard to transform our society and future. But we need your help, all of you. We have an expression in Afghanistan that you cannot clap with one hand. We have raised our hand. Join us, help us transform our future. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Ambassador Milan Verveer, Executive Director of the Georgetown Institute for Women, Peace, and Security, Mrs. Laura Bush, and the Honorable Hillary Rodham Clinton.
Well, it is my pleasure as well to be able to welcome Secretary Clinton and Mrs. Bush back to Georgetown and here for this conversation this morning. No one can question the commitment of either of you to this issue. I remember firsthand, Secretary Clinton, when you were First Lady, at the end of the 90s, calling the world's attention to the abuses that the Taliban were perpetrating and how critical the Afghan women were. And I remember so well, Mrs. Bush, when the military engagement was called by your husband after 9/11 in Afghanistan. And you took the president's radio address and told the world that the role of the Afghan women would be important to building the future of their country. And so you've heard a lot this morning. We're at a crossroads. The women have made enormous progress. They are very worried that their progress may be reversed. There are important events ahead. The elections in April for president, as well as a negotiated settlement, the reconciliation process. We still don't know where that will go. But to say that the women are concerned is an understatement. They fear that they may be a bargaining chip in that negotiated process with the Taliban. So what do we say, particularly in the backdrop of a United States that's war-weary, where we're focused at our many challenges at home? What can we do to ensure that this progress is not reversed? And as Secretary Kerry said, that this strategic necessity that the women represent to a better, prosperous, peaceful, stable Afghanistan is realized. And both of you, I know, have a great deal to say on this subject.
Well, even as our troops start to draw down, there's still many, many groups on the ground in Afghanistan. And it gives us the chance now, all Americans really, the chance to support those groups, to find the groups. Dr. Sakina Yakubi is here, who the Opus Prize winner, to support her schools and women's centers that are all over Afghanistan. Leslie Schweitzer is here, who is the fundraiser for American University of Afghanistan. And I think maybe we may get some questions out of Afghanistan from American University. You can give directly to the American University of Afghanistan to make sure girls have scholarships there. So I think as our troops leave, it's very, very important that we continue to support all the programs that were built over the last 10 years in Afghanistan, including many that came from this very council, the U.S. Afghan Women's Council, and to work with our own congressmen and women to make sure Afghanistan stays in the forefront, that people do pay attention to it. It's going to be, once our troops leave, the eyes of the United States will move away. And we can't let that happen. It's just, it just is so, so important. What's important are those lives in Afghanistan of people that have changed. And we need to make sure that they don't think we've shifted our attention as well as our troops.
I agree completely with Laura's comments, and I also want to bring into the conversation our international partners. We have, as I said, a number of diplomats. We also have the Foreign Minister of Norway, Minister Brende, welcome. Norway's been a great partner on behalf of the development and the human rights of the people of Afghanistan, with particular attention on Afghan women. So in addition to what we ask all of us to continue doing to support the projects and the people who are on the front lines, literally, of continuing the progress that has been made in Afghanistan, we want to closely coordinate with our friends around the world who also have made great investments and stand ready to continue to support that progress. I was very pleased with Secretary Kerry's remarks that perhaps we are close to the bilateral security agreement. The number one issue on the minds of the Afghan women who are here with us today is how they can continue their work if they don't have security. How can they continue to protect the girls that go to their schools? How can they continue to keep open the shelters for victims of domestic violence? How can they continue to encourage other women to take leadership positions in either the government or the private sector? So this is a very real worry, and I think we have to work with our own government, both the Obama administration and Secretary Kerry and the other leaders in the administration, as well as members of Congress, to keep this issue on the forefront, and then to coordinate as we withdraw with our coalition partners as well. I think, too, as Milan has pioneered in this work of peace and security, we have to continue to make the case to the leadership of Afghanistan that all of the sacrifice and the decades of war and conflict that have ravaged their country could be for naught if we don't have a unified consensus about what must happen going forward. Security is key. So are the elections that we just heard reference to. Those elections will determine whether there can be a peaceful transition of power that is validated in a fair and transparent manner by the people of Afghanistan. So when we look at, in Secretary Kerry's formulation, the security, the political, and the economic transitional challenges facing us, we need to be committed on all three fronts in support of those women and men who realize that Afghanistan is so strategically located, has so many opportunities to be at the real center of what happens in South and Central Asia, but that will all dissipate if there's not a commitment to ensuring that half the population gets a chance to fully participate. So I think we have our work cut out for us to support these women who are here with us today, to make sure that they continue to be given the attention and resources that they so richly deserve.
Well, just as we have the women here with us in Gaston Hall, there are a group of Afghan women gathered at American University, Afghanistan, in Kabul. And they can hear us, they can see us, and they have sent in advance a few questions they wanted to ask two women for whom they are immensely grateful for all that they've done for them. And you can see from this question that their minds are very much on the future and what's going to happen. And one question is, how can we encourage development investments and preserve those that have been made after 2014?
Go ahead again, Milan, sorry.
So we all know that a great deal of investing has been done in Afghanistan. We want to ensure that those are preserved. And they want to know, does it all end in 2014, or does this commitment continue?
Well, I know the commitment of the U.S. Afghan Women's Council and the women here who have founded programs across Afghanistan, that they want to continue. They will continue. I hope that there will also be, obviously, U.S. government participation as well. I think that's really important. And the international community as well has spent a lot of money, and I hope they'll continue a lot of the programs they've started. But I also want to encourage, especially the students at American University Afghanistan. After I heard Anita in her talk, I think it's very important for young people in Afghanistan to really start a youth movement, to get the word out before the elections about how important it is to vote and how important it is for all young people, boys and girls, young men and young women, to be involved in the future of their country. They can let older people know, as Anita said, that it's important that they live in a secure and safe country, that they have a chance to build the kind of prosperous, stable Afghanistan they want. So I want to encourage all the students at American University in Afghanistan to develop a strategy of public relations that you can use, just like you all did, to protest harassment in the street, that you can use to encourage people to vote, to make sure Afghanistan has free and fair elections so that Afghanistan really does show the rest of the world that they can build the country they want to have. And I know that's what the young people want.
I think that that's a real opportunity, and we were talking earlier in the council meeting that we need some kind of internet outreach, some kind of movement, a virtual movement to support the courageous stands that young people in Afghanistan are making, and also to try to enlist the support of young people around the world to make sure your voices are heard, even to perhaps do some crowdfunding on behalf of some of the projects that are and so important. With respect to the development aid, we held an international meeting in Tokyo in 2012, and it was a very successful pledging meeting. Countries that had troops were there, as well as countries that had no military troops but had sent both development experts and resources. And the decision was made that that community, representing a great number of nations, wanted to continue to support the development of Afghanistan in a variety of areas. But they did want to make sure there was transparency, that there was an effort to limit, if not avoid, corruption, that there was a need for the government to be more open to taking advice and expertise so that they could be better organized to deliver services to the Afghan people. And I think that is the sort of shorthand attitude of the international community represented by governments and aid agencies. And I think that's important because we do want to make sure that any aid that comes in is actually delivered to people who are doing the frontline work. I think, however, it would be a mistake for private funders, for NGOs, not to continue to try to fund people who are making a difference. How we do that is a subject we will be discussing further, because even though governments may decide that whatever standards they set are not being met, we would urge governments to not give up too easily despite all the budget problems that governments everywhere are facing. And we would urge the private NGO, civil society community that has been so helpful in many areas of Afghanistan not to give up either. So I think Milan and our students at the American University, we're going to have to be very determined to continue working together and encouraging the transfer of resources to those who have demonstrated a track record about being able to use them effectively to get results. We can't give up. And I think that you both are right that as our troops come home, there will be an understandable, totally human response in our country. Like, okay, fine, we spent all this money, we lost all these brave men and women, we ran into a lot of problems, we're proud of what we accomplished, but we can't continue at that rate. And we have to be prepared to make the case why we don't have a choice but to continue in some form and fashion what has worked. And I think that will fall to people like us to try to make that argument to the Congress and to the American public.
No surprise that security, as you've heard over and over, is also on the minds of the students you just saw at the university. Another question they have raised is how can they possibly raise awareness and preserve women's rights in the absence of security?
Well, it's very hard, let's be honest. It would be extremely hard, and security is the paramount issue, both security in and of itself for the physical well-being of people, but also for the work that is being done. I would like to just make a few quick points on this. I consider President Karzai a friend. I have worked with him ever since I was a senator. We've had many long conversations over the last 12 years. I know how passionate he is about Afghanistan's sovereignty and unity, and I admire that and agree that as the president of the country, he must stand firm for the people of Afghanistan. But I would hope that he will reach in the next 2 weeks agreement with the United States on a bilateral security agreement. The sticking point is one we have seen before, namely that when the United States sends our young men and women to continue to provide security, and in this case, to train and mentor the Afghan army and police in providing security for their own people, it is an absolute requirement that our troops be given immunity from local arrest and prosecution. That is what we have in Japan, in Korea, in Germany. I mean, anywhere in the world where you still see American troops, that is the requirement. And I understand President Karzai's sensitivity to this, but I would want to ask you to remember that we could not reach an agreement in Iraq, and Iraq is descending into a cycle of terrible violence. It's not that we could have stayed or for how long we would have stayed, but we never had a chance to really test it because the Maliki government said, no, we can't give those same immunities that are present in the Gulf, where we have troops in neighboring countries. So this is a big decision for the Afghan government. If you enter into the bilateral security agreement, it doesn't mean that the United States will be there in great numbers. It means that we will be available to help support the security forces of Afghanistan to protect against the continuing attacks from not only the Afghan Taliban, but other terrorist groups across the border. So that's the decision that has to be made. And I know it's a difficult decision. I'm not in any way implying it isn't. But if it's signed, then we will have a chance to really look seriously at what we and our continuing partners in providing security can offer. If it is not signed, which means that when the American troops and the NATO and international coalition leave, the Afghans are left totally to themselves. We have a set of very serious challenges that will be difficult for us to help with. And so this has to be thought through carefully because security is paramount. If you cannot provide security for your people, a lot of the other good results you're hoping for simply cannot happen. So I think these next 2 weeks, when it comes to security, will be especially important. And we won't know what we can do and how we can respond to the women's requests for support on security until we get an answer.
Did you want to add anything?
And obviously, no country can function in a successful way without both security and rule of law. And that comes from within the country, as well as, in this case, the presence of our troops in Afghanistan. So that's one of the things the Afghanis need to work on. The people of Afghanistan need to make sure they start to build the civic institutions that they need to support a democracy. And they get the word out. And I do think young people, like I said before, like Anita, will make an effort to get the word out across the country that we can succeed, that Afghanistan can succeed if we build our own security in the way and our own rule of law in a way that people respect and pay attention to.
Secretary Clinton, we have a question from a Georgetown graduate student, Amanda, and she has a question about the U.S. National Action Plan on Women, Peace, and Security, which you launched here at Georgetown. She asks, the plan calls for incorporating women's efforts into the range of U.S. work and development, diplomacy, and defense. What does this mean for Afghanistan?
Well, Amanda, I think it means that we have to do all we can to make the case and support the efforts of those with whom we are working to ensure that women's voices are heard in the areas that you mentioned, that we have to stand firmly for women's rights to participate fully in Afghan society, that we have to continue to find ways to support the education of women, the entrepreneurship of women, the political careers of women, so that there can be these role models that we saw in the video and we saw on stage that can encourage women and men to see a vision of Afghanistan that truly can move it to a new stage of its great and storied history. In doing the National Action Plan, and I'll give a plug to the National Defense University, which will be publishing a book of essays by a number of experts, military experts, intelligence, diplomatic experts, talking about the difference that involving women makes. It's not just something that, Laura and Milan and I are up here saying it would be really nice if you did this. We know it works. We know that in the absence of women being at peace tables, being in negotiations, representing their views, it is less likely to succeed in terms of ending conflicts and providing security. Just one quick example, which is one of my favorites, is Liberia, a place that both Laura and I have been to, and we so strongly admire Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. We would have never ended the horrible conflict in Liberia had it not been for the women of Liberia. They finally said they'd had enough. Christian and Muslim women alike joined together to make it clear to the men who were negotiating the peace agreement, which they had tried to negotiate, I think, 7 or 8 times before, that they were not going home. And in fact, they barred the doors and guarded the windows so the men could not escape until they reached a peace agreement. And if you want to see that in action, one of my favorite documentaries is Pray the Devil Back to Hell, which is about what happened in Liberia because women finally stood up and said, we're the ones who are most at risk. It is our children who are being, savagely abused or killed. We cannot stand for this any longer. And so as the Institute here at Georgetown does its work, as the National Defense University integrates into the curriculum what it means to stand up for women and peace and security, we will learn these lessons and be able to work with our friends and colleagues in Afghanistan and to make the case over and over again that peace agreements don't last if they don't represent the entire community, and you can't do that without having women's voices and participation.
And Mrs. Bush, you have made, excuse me, this issue a priority issue at the Bush Institute. You've focused on a range of investments in Afghan women, and economic participation is one of those most significant. Tell us a little bit about why. Why does economic participation and the ability of women to do their work enable them to be more secure in an insecure environment, and also to create stability in their country?
Well, one of the really important reasons, of course, is if you leave half of the population out of the economy, then you're not going to have a very successful economy. So when women are included in economic life, and actually Afghan women especially seem particularly entrepreneurial. I've heard lots of great stories. The woman who started the furniture business early on, right after the Taliban left Kabul, and became so successful as a furniture builder and a furniture salesman that 3 men, cobblers, came to her and said, "Would you help us build a shoe company?" And she said, "No, but my daughter's available to help you." And so she said, "I'll give you a loan to start, but you're going to have to pay me back." So now her daughter is in the shoemaking business with 3 men, 3 cobblers who wanted her help in being able to build a business. All of that's really important. And Afghan women are working right now in lots of different businesses all across Afghanistan. It is very important to the economy of Afghanistan. But Afghanistan also stands at a point, if they can stay stable and secure, to be able to develop a lot of their resources that they have. And I want to encourage you, and this is something I'd like to do through the Bush Institute, and that is to be a convener with people of Afghanistan and corporations, United States corporations, to help develop what you all have in Afghanistan, but not develop it for export, but develop it so that you and the people of Afghanistan can learn the skills to build whatever it is you have at home, so that both people are employed at home and you make not just what you would make by selling your resources, but you would make what you made by selling your resources turned into the products that you build yourself. And you can build your economy in a great way. And I really think that once men are employed also, and young men are employed across Afghanistan, then there's going to be a lot fewer young men who will want to join the Taliban, but instead will want to work to build safe lives for themselves, safe and prosperous lives. So I think education and employment are the 2 keys, and of course, we know those are the keys in our country as well.
I hate to end this conversation, but the clock is ticking, but I don't want us to leave until we can ask one more question, and that is, it's a continuation of some of what you've both said. But this room is filled with policymakers, NGO leaders, business leaders, extraordinary students, something I've discovered over the last few months coming back to my alma mater, young men and women with great talent, as well as faculty and administrators who care. What can we do? We've heard a lot already, we'll hear a little bit more, but what can each of us do to advance this agenda and ensure that the kind of investments that have been made by the United States and the international community over the last decade plus endure and don't push everything back?
Well, I would say first, just keep talking about it. But I'm so worried that once our troops leave, no one will pay attention again to Afghanistan. And we just can't take that risk. And we don't want the people of Afghanistan to think that because our troops are leaving, they no longer matter to us. because they do matter. And the relationships and the friendships we've built, especially with Afghan women and through the U.S. Afghan Women's Council, but just through many, many opportunities that we've had to meet, really do matter to us. And I want the people of Afghanistan to know that the people of the United States do support them and are with them. I remember at a conference that we had shortly after we moved back to Dallas that the Bush Institute hosted, and the Opus Prize winner, Dr. Sakina Yakubi, was there, and she said at the end, she said, listen, don't feel sorry for us, just be with us. And that's what we need to do. We need to just stay with them, and we will.
Besides saying amen, I would love to have Georgetown students talk with one another about what you can do in solidarity with the young people of Afghanistan. As Anita reminded us, the population of young people is, 60%, a very high percentage. What can you do to support them through virtual contacts, through raising money, through exchange programs, anything that can keep the lines of communication and relationship building going? This university is already making a very significant contribution to the future debate through the Institute on Peace and Security and through other academic and professional programs that you have. The more we can link up our university communities on some of these specific issues in support, for example, of the American University in Kabul, looking for ways to do much more in terms of exchanges that can be partnered with the Bush Institute or other institutions. Those are lifelines. Those make a tremendous difference in validating the work that is being done and lifting up examples. And I think it's important to tell the story to our fellow Americans about what has been accomplished, because there's a sense that, what did we really get for everything we did, and how do we know it will last? Well, we need to tell the story to the first question. Here's a lot of what we accomplished. Compare where Afghanistan was in 2001 with where they are today. And then to sort of take it to the next level by, as Laura said, talking about why this is still important for the United States. So I'm hoping that in the next year, because this upcoming year is the critical year, we will have a much greater awareness and a better connection among people who know what's at stake in Afghanistan from either a moral perspective, a human rights perspective, a strategic, economic, political, whichever way you enter into it, every one of those is at stake. And to think of ways we can be creative to support the women and men who are trying to move Afghanistan forward. And we will certainly, the three of us, be deeply involved in making that case. But we need a virtual army now that the real army is leaving. We need a virtual army to help us make the case and to build that awareness here in the United States and around the world.
Good job, Hillary. Well, thank you to you both, Mrs. Bush, Secretary Clinton. Thank you for all you've done. Thank you for all you will surely continue to do. And thank you for being an extraordinary bipartisan face on an issue that has no partisanship. I'm going to go down.